like we got a dud. Came out to get some sunset stuff. I don't think it's gonna work out so well. But that won't stop me from giving you guys some tips on how to do some basic sunset photography. Figure we'll start with the easy stuff since I actually get a surprising amount of questions about how to do sunsets. You guys hear that ridiculous truck in the background? These guys are like doing donuts behind me. Oh my God. Let's get set up real quick. First tip, when you do astrophotography, when you're done, take it off of those settings and put it back to normal settings. It's 30 seconds and 10,000 ISO. It's not good for sunsets. All right, a basic time lapse going. So, like I was saying, I get asked this a lot, and it's basically, how do I take pictures of the sunset? So for beginners, sunsets can be really tricky because they're super dynamic. They can be, and they're always different. And everyone's always asking me, what settings should I use for sunsets? And the answer, the straight up answer is, it depends. That's like the worst answer everybody wants to hear, and that's like the best answer that you want to give. But it depends. So let's go over 3 different scenarios of sunsets and talk about how I shoot them. So the first type is the type that everybody's interested in. That's when you have the ridiculous clouds and the huge fire in the sky and everything looks amazing up here. So when you want to photograph that and you don't have anything interesting in the foreground, again, we're going to keep this basic. I'm not going to go into HDR. I'm not going to go into focus stacking and foreground elements and all that kind of stuff. We're talking about straight up sunset, fire in the sky. What you want to do is meter for the sky. If you're shooting and you're metering for something that's down here in the dark, then your sky is going to be blown out. So I would rather have a silhouette like this, where I have these beautiful mountains and they're nice and silhouetted, and the entire focus, again, since there's no foreground, the entire focus is going to be on that sky. So anytime you have super bright clouds and a lot going on in the sky and you want to emphasize that, you meter for the sky. What does that mean? That means you make sure that your exposure is set to the sky is not blown out. That's going to create a silhouette for everything else that's underneath it. And in a lot of cases, that's okay, because silhouetting things can look really cool, whether it's a person or an object or a mountain or the horizon or city skyline or anything like that. The emphasis, if you have those awesome clouds, is going to be on those clouds, exposed for your highlights. So in terms of just basic settings for exposing for your highlights, your aperture, you're going to want it somewhere in the middle, you know, somewhere where your lens is nice and sharp. Usually landscape photographers are happy between 7.1 and f11 or higher, but the higher you go, the more diffraction you're going to introduce, and that's maybe a little bit different of an episode. But just know that you're going to want it somewhere, you know, in the middle. If you're like me and you don't clean your sensors very much and you have a lot of sensor dust and you don't want that in your images or your videos, then you can shoot wide open and then just crank your shutter speed down to a faster shutter speed. Either way, that is totally up to you. The settings are going to be based on what the light in your scene is. So you may have a faster shutter speed even at a medium f-stop like f11 or f8 or whatever. You may still have a really fast shutter speed like 500th of a second, 1,000th of a second, even if it's the sky is super bright. And that's what's going to give you that silhouette for everything else being dark. All right, next scenario. This is one that we deal with a lot in New Mexico. Not right now, obviously, but in other times, most of the time in New Mexico, we don't have clouds. So we have a lot of sun and not any clouds. So what do you do if you want to do a sunset shot, but you don't have any clouds at all? Well, there's 2 things that I really love to do. The first thing, if y'all know my channel, if you follow me, then you know I love my sun stars. So I have a whole tutorial on how to do that right here. You can check that out for more detail, but basically crank your aperture up to f16 is usually the happy number, and get that sun star and wait till that sun is on the horizon and is breaking through. And if you want, then you can throw something in the foreground like here. And this image actually took me like 4 to 6 shots or something like that because I had to focus stack it. But if you're shooting at f/16 and you want to get that sun star, anything that you put, if as long as you don't get super close, like in this image I was super close to the cactus here, but if you back up about 10 feet or so from anything in your subject and you focus on infinity with f/16 to get that sun star, then pretty much everything is going to be in focus, and you're not going to have to focus stack unless you're just really, really meticulous about it and you know, want that detail. But especially if you downsize the image and put it on Instagram or social media or Facebook or whatever, nobody's going to notice. So sun stars. The other thing I like to do when there's no clouds is I like to focus on the golden hour light. So if you're lucky like me and you live in awesome places with cool mountains or cityscapes in the distance or whatever, then focus on that golden hour light, because if there's no clouds, then there's nothing stopping that sun from pumping out that nice low-level horizon golden hour light. And emphasize that in your landscapes or in your cityscapes, wherever you happen to be. Emphasize that light. And along those lines, what I love to use is, oh god, my bag is killing me today. What I love to use is this guy. So this, and it doesn't matter what lens you have, but this is like my favorite lens ever. This is the Canon 100 to 400 Mark II. But basically, I love shooting super long, 400 millimeters, especially out here. Like, look how far away all the mountains are. So if these mountains would have lit up tonight, which I was kind of hoping they would, then I would have had this guy on there, and I would have been shooting close-ups like this, where we have focusing on the shapes of the mountains and focusing on the light on the mountains, even though the clouds aren't that interesting or there's none there at all. So get creative with your long lenses and get up in that golden hour light. That one cloud strip is lighting up right there. Everything else is dudding out. And yeah, sunset's technically in 5 minutes. So, all right. So last tip, if it looks like this, go home. No, I'm just kidding. There's not much out here. But if it's like this, honestly, if you think you're going to get a dud, and if you have a cool landscape like this, the last thing I would say that a lot of people kind of forget or don't think about is shoot blue hour. So blue hour is the time right after sunset or right before sunrise when everything's kind of blue. And like, I have this beautiful city, I have this beautiful little village behind me, and it looks kind of cool because there's nice mountains behind it, and when the lights turn on and everything, you have that blue hour feel, then that can look really cool. So stick around, you know, wait it out, and if you get a dud like that, if you have somewhere that's cool, then try to go for that blue hour and just do a little bit longer of an exposure. But that's not sunset, so I digressed a lot. But those are my 3 tips for the sunset. So scenario number 1, awesome sunset, awesome clouds, not a whole lot, meter for the clouds, expose for your highlights. The highlights, shadows are recoverable much easier than highlights are. So when the highlights are blown, there's just no more data there. You can't recover that. Expose for your highlights. Scenario number 2, no clouds. Emphasize that golden hour light. Get something in your foreground. Make more use of the land and less use of the sky. Wait till that sun's on the horizon. Get you a nice sunburst. Also, for scenario number 2 that I didn't mention, again with the 400 or with any long lens, even the 70 to 200, get all up in that sun's grill, as close to the sun as you can. Stop it down all the way. You can get cool shots like this. I love doing just really close-ups of the sun. You can use an ND filter if you want, or you can stop it all the way down, crank your shutter speed all the way down. So on this thing, you have like a ridiculously small aperture, like f/32, and then like 8,000th of a second. I mean, literally, that's what you might need to shoot something like that. But I really enjoy those because, I don't know, I just don't see that as much, and I love shooting the sun in the face. So that's one more. That's a free tip in the second scenario. And then the third scenario was what?
When it does, just do blue hour.
Oh yeah. And then the third scenario is when it does, just do blue hour. All right, I'm gonna wrap it up here because this time lapse, it didn't happen. So it's tea time, it's dinner time. I think I need to go pick up my son because he's skateboarding somewhere. So we should probably go find him. All right, but if you have any questions, if there's anything I missed about just basic sunrise or sunset, sunrise stuff, again, this wasn't intended to be in depth on how to get the best images ever with like the most technical stuff. This is just super basic. Those 3 tips, those 3 intro stuff. If you have any questions on those, leave them in the comments below and you know I'll answer them. Hit that like button if this video helped you out. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. I've got new videos every week. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.